All right, I am here today with a brand new podcast slash YouTube cast, whatever the kids are calling it. I don't know, but I'm here with my buddy Tim McGuire. He's a creative director. I'm going to give you guys some insight on our industry from his perspective. You always hear it from my perspective. I want to sort of start a new series where I give you perspective from other people in the photography industry. Tim has been a creative director for Williams Sonoma for a very long time. He's collaborated with the NFL, he's collaborated with Lego, Burton, Solomon, so many amazing brands out there. You can check out his website, timmcguirecreative.com. And just welcome Tim. Tim's also an old buddy, grew up a block from me. We've gone on vacations together. He's seen me without my shirt off, so he's in the circle of trust. He has amazing hair. Anyway, Tim, welcome here today, and let's talk about photography.
Justin, good to be here and looking forward to talking everything photo.
Yeah, money. People want to talk about money. No, I want to start with I want to start with
Start with
people.
money.
People
Yeah.
have the start. First of all, as a creative director for you worked a bulk of your career for Williams Sonoma. You now have your own outlet now, and that was in Williams Sonoma. You're working for Pottery Barn. For people that aren't in the U.S., explain a little bit about Pottery Barn. Explain a little bit about your role as a creative director and what you did for the bulk of your career for them and as a creative director.
Well, as you said, Williams Sonoma Pottery Barn, bulk of my career there, 16 plus years with them. And they're a home furnishings company. Williams Sonoma parent company owns a bunch of brands, but I worked for the Pottery Barn brands, specifically the kids and teen brands, as a creative director, VP of creative services over those two brands. And we did everything from all the content creation needed for all the marketing materials. So it started out as catalogs, then evolved into all site and all marketing materials, all social, video, you name it. That was under my field of direction. And so I would hire photographers, stylists, soft goods stylists, prop stylists, food stylists, wardrobe stylists, models, book locations, you name it, anything that had to do with photography and content creation that we would do for those brands. And then we would also concept and then develop and execute and bring it all the way to fruition, site posts and social posts, you name it. So anything creative that was branded came through our office.
So a lot of lifestyle photography, and that's interesting because that's a lot of what I do in the hotel world. There's some crossover. I mean, I see a lot. You're doing a lot with lighting. You're doing a lot with studio. I'm sure you're doing product shoots sometimes too. But the lifestyle shoots, I think, would be interesting for my audience to talk about. Not that studio stuff is not interesting, but I know less about that, and it's a little more boring to me because no people in the shots. But talk me through those shoots, like what those were like budget wise. People like talking money. How long were they? Yeah, and what like break that down for me because I think people have no idea what to quote. I don't know if you could talk specifics, but what a photographer's charging for per day. What are you guys actually dictating the fee, or are you saying like, hey man, what's your rate? Like, how does that all go for quoting for a project for you guys? Give me an example.
Sure. And then just to clarify, way we did it was over the 16 years, my career was 90% on location and 10% in
Mm-hmm.
studio. And then
Wow,
it
great for
switched,
you.
that dynamic switched to 90% in studio and 10% on location.
Oh
And so
no.
we would, oh yeah. Well, it was great because it was a way to control, we would build sets, massive sets. We
Sure.
build
Yeah.
and create those unique homes in studio. And we would leverage, a set that we could be there for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, just making simple modifications. And then we would bring models in and we'd bring, lifestyle kind of content creation. We also do smaller vignettes and pit photography, solo photography, or simple environments kind of stuff. But everything from soup to nuts we created, but either out on studio or out on location. But we basically paid a typical day rate for a photographer. So you're asking about money. It's basically we pay a day rate anywhere from in a lifestyle shoot, anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 a day, and that was the photographer's rate. There was also a digi package that would be their digital assistant, a tech, and plus their setup, which would be the computer, the backup, the naming conventions, all that stuff that they would handle. also an assistant, so on and so forth, plus lighting package, depending on what the shoots were needed. If we're out on location, obviously you're needing some
Hmm.
bigger elements. If you're in studio, when I was leaving those brands, they were looking at, buying all of the lighting packages. So it would basically take
Wow.
that off of the photographer's rate, and basically they would be able to use those HMIs or whatever it may be for
Hmm.
8 week long shoots. So your other question was how long the shoots. Typically in a season is about 6 to 8 weeks long. That would be for
Wow. Same
two teams.
photographer. Okay,
No,
two
no,
teams.
actually, no. We
Okay.
would bring in a photographer roughly 2 weeks at a time, and then a
Hmm.
stylist would come in and partner with them for 2 weeks at a time, and then we'd cycle them through, um, and so somebody else would come in. So we have I don't know 16 photographers total in that 8 week shoot.
Okay.
Is that math right? No, it's not. Yeah, yeah.
You're asking the wrong guy for
Um,
math, but yeah, I'll just trust you.
but basically, it was we would hire somebody for 2 weeks at a time, and then after 2 weeks somebody else would come in, and we'd potentially be a different a brand that we're working on, or a sub brand, or depending on how the shoot kind of played out. But that was where we'd work with Cadence with changing over sets and changing over, or maybe go out on location for 2 weeks and be in for 2 weeks. So we kind of played depending on how the schedule broke out.
Yeah, no, that's great insight. Were they billing you for gear? Like, are they billing you to use their own gear? I think photographers are always curious about
Yes.
that. They are.
And again, they were, and again, when I left, we're looking at changing that over to basically they were looking buying cameras, lenses, um,
Wow.
all the things. Oh yeah, everything. So basically the photographer would just show up, and they would just get their day rate, which was great. So as the the business model for a lot of photographers before that, and it still happens in many other places because they can't afford to buy all the lighting packages,
Sure.
was you buy your lighting, and then you as a photographer could then charge clients for the use for that week
Sure.
or 2 weeks, whatever it is. And as you basically pay for your lighting thing. If you're working enough, you can pay for your lighting within a year's worth of shooting, right? And
Yeah.
then it's
Yep.
it's a moneymaker, right?
And
And
it's funny, I
as
couldn't ever do that in editorial, but a commercial, it was no problem. I didn't know that until I started to see these contracts. And I think a lot of my audience doesn't know that. I was like, they would say, like, oh, they would just put the fee out there. This is our fee for a DigiCheck. This is for, and I was like, oh, I can charge for that because they already had the fee. And then every commercial shoot, because no one taught me this stuff in school and there was no playbook for it. And that's why I like having people like you on. I mean, I think it's great. Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
No, and so it was a great way for from a business standpoint. So I was in charge of the budgets. I was in charge of we had basically a $4 million budget for the year for these two brands, and that was all in photo content creation. And so we were being tasked to cut budgets. And so one place that we
Mm-hmm.
saw was an opportunity was how do we look at our photo budgets and be smart about it and say, okay, if we're shooting roughly 3/4 of the year
Mm.
daily, weekly, we're paying for this lighting packages over and over again, and it's a great way to save money, and a great way to be smart about our budgets. So unfortunately, that photographers, that part of their
Right, right.
their how they're making money was renting us equipment, that we kind of looked at how to basically not pay that.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, I saw it like when I did a few shoots for RH Restoration Hardware, and you did some work with them as well. But I saw something I'd never seen before at each one of the factories, because I was doing more like these are our subcontractors, but they were making their subcontractors. I don't know if making's the right term, maybe suggesting that they each had like a photo setup, a kit at their factory, and it was like they were like, yeah, of course we do. I'm like, well, I've never seen that before in my life or anyone else. No other factories have pro photo equipment, cameras,
Right.
backdrops, and they just had it, and it was just normal for them because they do that many photo shoots. But I'd never seen that before. Did you guys ever consider hiring, like, because you do so many photo shoots? I mean, it doesn't work for hotels. Doesn't work because they might do one big shoot a year, or maybe every few years. But did you guys ever consider having an in-house full-time photographer? Is that something that was ever floated?
Absolutely. And when after I left, they were looking to hire in-house studio photographers, and it was basically the people that were doing the silhouette photography, the smaller vignettes, the smaller PIP photography, product information page photography, that
Mm,
was less of the branded kind of shots. And so they were looking at how do we uh, maximize our budgets, get staff photographers. So I believe they've hired a couple staff photographers per brand to
mm-hmm,
create that everyday kind of content, and then bring in the more seasoned photographers for the higher level branded homepages, catalog covers, in-store signage, you name it,
mm,
that stuff that needed that higher touch or that higher experience of photographer. um,
mm.
so yeah, absolutely. And the same thing, they were looking at stylists and every anything that was photo related that was a recurring kind of expense. What what was the right thing to do, and could they be leveraged enough of the year to pay for itself? So it's kind of interesting,
Funny.
kind of business.
Yeah, because I always consider that. I wonder if you do enough shoots, it just makes sense because photographers' day rates add up. I kind of want to go back to what we were talking about before. Just a funny little side question. Maybe there's no good answer here, but you did 90% of shoots at lifestyle, which would be fill light, but a lot of natural light, a lot of location management, and then you went 90% studio. Did you notice a difference in the photographers, the personality of the photographers that were like the natural outdoor natural light guys compared to the studio guys? Is there any traits you could be like, oh, these guys were like good at this or bad at this? Like, I'd love to hear it because I'm a natural light guy by nature. I still have
Right.
to shoot with lighting on some shoots, but so rip us apart.
No, absolutely. And there were photographers that could do both, absolutely. And
Uh-huh.
some, and also, with the brands that I was working on, the kids and teen brands, we had models. And
Right.
so there was another level of complication that
Sure.
not
Yeah.
everybody was good at interiors. So we're creating room environments. So we would go on location, and all the ins and outs of being on, and we rent homes in Napa and Sonoma and down in the peninsula. I'm in the Bay Area, by the way.
Ooh,
Um,
I forgot to
and
mention that. Yes.
yeah, yeah. But we, there were photographers that excelled at just adding an additional lighting or additional just kind of little kiss, little
Hmm.
what we call a ray of God, where the rake across,
Right.
across the product. But then those same photographers weren't necessarily great in studio. And so, some of them did struggle for sure. And we worked with them. We knew that this was kind of a definitely, and it wasn't we flip a switch and it was 90 to 10 and vice versa.
Sure.
We kind of just, we took over time. We said, okay, we're getting more efficient at building our sets, and we're getting efficient at creating this content, and it's much more controlled. We would
Mm.
shoot winter in January, or we'd shoot summer photography in January, and it 6 months in advance, and in the Bay Area it could be raining sideways for the whole month of January, and you're
Right.
hosed. And so if
Yeah.
we get into a
Right.
studio and you can hear the rain, the patter hitting the roof, but you have a completely controlled environment, with three HMIs, and it feels like you're sitting in Napa, sunny Napa. So it was a
Mm.
way to really make it work. And so we had them bring in, extra lighting people to help them kind of work through the challenges of making it feel lifelike. And it didn't happen overnight, but we were there to work with them, and it was kind of an amazing transition over a couple of year window of making that switch from
Mm.
90 to 10, vice versa. So and some just couldn't do it, and so
Right.
and that's fine. And then they kind of knew it too, and they were like, it's not my forte. I'm much more inspired by the serendipity of being out on location and being in a studio
Hmm.
with only building three walls and not a real roof, and it just not inspiring to me. And so we kind of parted ways, and
Mm.
then we brought them in when we would go to Hawaii for a month, and do location photography, because they would excel at that kind of moment, and they're great with models and great with the whole scenario, but they just didn't want to be in a studio. They weren't inspired, and so the creativity kind of lacked. So
That's interesting. I think it's also a personality thing when it comes to models as well. Like not just lighting interiors and exteriors, but I noticed like when I started doing hotels, my big thing was like I saw an opening in the market because I saw a lot of photographers that were fantastic at interiors and architecture, but terrible at photographing people. And I was the opposite. When I started doing that stuff, okay, I didn't know interiors, interior lighting, multiple exposures, that kind of stuff. But I was like, wow, every time there's a person in it, these people fall apart, or they're like featuring a hotel lobby and the person's 90% of the picture. I'm like, what does that say about the property? I'm like, and I saw an opening, and I came in hot, and we got a bunch of big clients from that, but those guys were saying the opposite, like, oh, this guy doesn't know how to do interior, so I had to catch up quickly. It's also interesting in the industry how you can sort of get pigeonholed, because I did so many natural light shots, and I work with this other big brand that I signed an NDA with, but like you can get caught into like, oh, he's the natural light guy. I'm like, no, I can do the other stuff really well too. I feel confident in it, but people like to, I don't, do you ever find that? Do you find yourself pigeonholing people? Because photographers, we get like that too. There's some guys that do weddings, and you're like, oh, well, he couldn't do commercial work, but like, why not? They shoot weddings beautiful. They know how to direct people. There's something there in how they work in that chaos. Did you ever just did that ever come across your desk of like you saw
100%.
that in a portfolio? Yeah, tell me about
Yeah,
it.
and not necessarily in a portfolio, but more of, uh, I guess, yes, both ways. One with people that we
Mm,
worked with, and we tried to bring models in, and because it was a last minute, kind of change the schedule and say, oh, we wouldn't necessarily book them for a model shoot, but we had to bring
mm,
models in, and we saw them either excel at it or not excel, and kind of struggle with it.
mm.
There's a dynamic, as you know, with working with models. You need to be connected.
Yeah,
The photographer needs to be connected with the model. Not the chaos of going on, everything else that's happening, but you need to make a connection. And if you're not, as a photographer, make a connection with the model, then the photography is never going to come across, right?
for sure.
There's never going to have that soulful piece of it. So we saw photographers that we didn't necessarily think were going to do well excel, and ones that we like, oh, this could be a
Mm,
problem. And so it kind of happens. And then, yeah, so there were photographers that by experience and seeing them work, we said, okay, we can't bring in models for that person because just not that's not their forte, and that's fine because they do
yeah.
great things. We would have a long enough shoot, again, 8 weeks long, two teams, that long enough that we could, okay, that week is going to be focused on whatever that's non-model focused, or it's going to be very
Hmm.
light in models, and models a prop, a blurry thing in the background kind of thing. So that's not going to be the key element of the shot. Um, and then there were photographers that were just typecasted that, yeah, they're location people only, and or these are
Mm,
just studio only. They're not great on location. So you kind of, we would spend days, me and my photo team, working through the schedule based on product availability and the schedule and the locations and where we're going to be, and plugging in a talent that we knew that was going to be successful, or the most successful that we thought we could put together. So
mm.
it was an interesting dynamic, and it was kind of a shuffleboard of making it the teams work really well together and get the best product possible.
Give me that dynamic, because I think a lot of people are interested in, like, you guys are doing big shoots, thousands of dollars at stake, $4 million budget a year. That's nuts. That's a lot of money going into photography. So like, but I think not a lot of people, not a lot of photographers have ever even worked with a creative director. So give me sort of the process from start to finish, like how you're finding the photographer, what it's like for pre-production, what it's like during the shoot, and what it's like afterwards, like your role. I mean, essentially, I know it because you're the boss, man. You're the guy I want to impress. I want to kiss your ass on the shoot. But I don't know if everyone kind of knows that. And a lot of shoots, in Asia, a lot of times I'm working. I had to be the creative director, but on bigger international shoots with big budget, we had a Tim. So tell me what a Tim does from start to finish.
Well, I kind of said it earlier, but it's the my role is as a creative director, similar to an art director. I kind of liken
Hmm.
the difference of the creative director is looking at the bigger picture, the holistic seasonal campaigns,
Hmm.
multiple seasons at a time, kind of looking at all the bigger components. I'm working very closely with the business partners that the photo teams are never seeing. So the merchants, the product development team, the senior management. I'm the buffer between the senior management and the decision makers and the creative teams, which are so
Hmm.
corporate side to the creative side. And so I'm the kind of
Hmm.
the go between the two. I have that bigger knowledge of knowing how much content needs to get created, where it's going to sit in the overall marketing. And then in the day of shoot, I'm the art director, potentially
Hmm.
sometimes, where I'm the one keep conveying all that information to the photo teams. So my right hand man person is the photographer on set. Is they're the person that probably has the most knowledge, the second most knowledge on the shoot that I can
Right.
convey to them. Because I've called them in earlier. I've sat down with them, say, here's kind of the overall schedule. I put a little deck together specific to their
Hmm.
weeks of photography and walk them through, here's what we're looking at, and kind of give them a broad picture of here's here's how these shots are kind of fitting into the overall campaign. Here, there's how these are going to be our cover shots or our homepage shots, or these are the ones that are going to be on the store signage, and knowing where the most important aspects are. Um, and they are, because as an art director, as a creative director, I'm being pulled in 100 different directions. So I'm trying
Mm.
to give
Yeah.
them
Right.
the most amount of information. So when I get pulled away, we can't wait for me to sit there next to the photographer and relay information all day long. They need to
Mm.
keep going and keep moving, and capturing thousands of captures in a shot. Especially you have models, you're just you're clicking away all day long. Outfit changes, scenario changes, so they need to have the most amount of information that they can keep the shoots moving and going.
Mm.
Um, and it's there to help push the creative. So
Hmm.
I'll have a deck that's going to be roughly what we need to capture. But I've also hired that
Mm.
photographer to bring a little bit of their own little spice and what they do and bring to the table, and knowing that we'll capture what we need. And then I expect them to also then keep going and try different things and push some boundaries. And I'm there to also say,
Mm.
hey, we've got it. We're looking at the schedule. I'm looking at the clock and going, okay, we need to keep moving, or go
Right.
ahead, play. Let's get some more
Yeah.
great stuff in.
I love
Sometimes,
that. Yeah.
which if you, and we tried to bake that in the schedule, so there is opportunity to play, and that's my role as the art director, the creative director
Mm.
on that given day, is to give the creative team enough space to be creative and do what they do best, and but
Yeah.
also know when they're off the rails, or like, oh, just kind of I don't know, off
Everything's
the
out of
rails.
focus.
Right, well, that's happened, yeah, sure, but it's
I'm trying some artsy
it's
here.
it's where when I have to step in and say, okay, we need to keep. Well, let's go back to where we were here, from a lighting
Mm.
or from a mood, or an energy, or angle wise, and focus. Pulling your focus a little bit. It's knowing to say, okay, we've gone too far. Let's get back on track. Here's where we go,
Hmm.
and deliver it in a very nice way, and make sure that nobody's egos um, are hurt, and they feel like they're
We are
still.
fragile. We're we're
There
all
are. I
fragile
mean,
people.
no, and it's all creatives, and there's the reason why
Yeah.
a lot of creatives don't work in house and work in corporate, because that's
Hmm.
that's what we want. We want that creativity. We want them to be working on different clients. We
Yeah.
want them to be working. Oh, we did this great shoot with blah blah blah, and we use this kind of filter for whatever it was. And that's the stuff I want to pull from all those different people, not just a photographer, but from the stylists that work on those other brands that go, oh, we did this really cool thing with plants, and we put a foreground element and it's kind of whatever it may be. Is that's what we want. We want people to not just be in a corporate environment that is just going to repeat what they did the week before and the week before that. We want somebody that has a new perspective.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, on the shoot, I think a lot of people. I mean, you talk about you're the direct line to the photographer. It's almost like if you sports analogy, like you're the coach, the photographer's maybe the quarterback, and he's right out there. He's got to manage the props team, the models, and direct everything, and then come back and check with you, right? So you're essentially looking at Video Village or like a screen and being like, yeah, that's okay. We're on schedule now, but we've got 10 minutes. That's like one of my favorite things to hear from a creative director is like once you fall in that rhythm, and that rhythm is so important because like if I'm wasting time and you're not telling me, then this is terrible. But if we have good communication, you're like, all right, Justin, we've got models by the pool wearing this and the deck furniture. Cool. We've got that shot that we thought. We've got 10 minutes left. And the other shot, maybe like or the producer knows, like maybe we needed to tack that onto the next shot, or maybe it's the end of the day, it's the last shot. hey, what are you seeing that I'm not? What if we hop on the roof? What if we try this? What if we light it a little different? What if the action's a
Yeah.
little different? That collaborate, and the photographer has to manage all these things at the same time. So you also, I think, as a creative director, have to be careful with like overwhelming them. But a good commercial photographer should be able to absorb all this information. Also ask too. Like I asked. That's something I learned through maturity and experience. I'd be like, hey, can I try something? It's never like forceful, but it's like, hey, dude, can I try this? Because I think it might be cool. And I've been way off. They're like, yeah, no. And then I've been like, oh, that's the shot
Well,
they use for the campaign. You know what I mean? Like that happens a lot too.
100%. And that happens a lot all the time. And I would say, on some of our bigger shoots, more branded shoots, we'd sit down, well, 2 weeks in advance. Our deck is, we would send the photographer, we'd call them, walk them through that. And I'd say, hey, if you got any ideas or any swipe, any kind of
Mm,
inspiration, please send it back. We can maybe, include it. We'd have the dialogue. And then we would put that deck up on a V flat in the corner in the shoot, wherever it is, making sure that, all the branded images that were, and shot lists and all that, say, okay. And we're going back, we're kind of referring back to it. And if I see a photographer's not able to get what we're asking for, it kind of bring them back to that V flat and
mm,
those inspiration images. Hey, this is what we're looking for. And they're like, hey, what if we, and then the opportunity for dialogue and say, hey, this is what you're hitting or you're not hitting. And then opportunity for them to say, hey, let me try something different. And then go for it. And then having that dialogue and building that trust. And that doesn't happen overnight.
no, it doesn't. Yeah.
I work with photographers for the whole 16 years that I was at Williams Sonoma, same photographer for the whole 16 years. And I would have him or her, two of them, him and her back every season, 2 weeks at a time
Mm,
for 16, 4 times a year.
wow.
So, and that got to a point where I didn't even need to be in the room at the time, where
Right.
I would say, here's what we need to get. And they were so seasoned, they knew it, and they'd bang it out every time. And there's some
I love that. Yeah.
and there's some over years that just kind of lost interest and they're like, yeah, that's not for me anymore. Or,
Mm,
or what I also saw is, so we asked about how you get into our shoots is, a lot of it
yeah.
was you're an assistant,
Right.
and then you're observing, you're seeing, you all of a sudden you become, over a couple of years, you become that second shooter. And then, oh, hey,
Right.
maybe, and I see that I see some promise there. I said, maybe we'll use that shooter in doing some of our digital photography shoots and to come to our
Right.
smaller, less important stuff. Or, hey, somebody couldn't make it, can you fill in for the day, kind of thing, and give them those opportunities. But that doesn't happen overnight. It's, we weren't hiring people just off the street. It was something that I knew that I could trust. And,
Mm,
we're spending, you know, you know, roughly 15 grand a day in all
right. Too much at
expenses,
stake. Yeah.
a lot at stake. And, you know, there's not a whole lot of room for error or not getting what we need. And so I got to feel pretty confident that the person that's going to be plopped down for a week worth of photography or even 2 weeks of photography is going to produce time and time
Yeah. My
again.
my
And
shoots
it,
aren't
and
as
it's
long as the ones you're doing. Sorry, go ahead.
sure. Well, and basically it's we've got to take all we hire people that can deal with anything that can go wrong and has seen it go wrong 4 times. So knows
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly what to deal with when, I think I told you a story one point is we were in a shoot in Palm Springs and it was like, we were waiting for the golden hour. We had built a cabana as a set team came down from San Francisco, built this at
Mm,
the end of a pool. We wanted this long shot over the pool. So you saw the pool foreground, cameras really low with water level. And it was a model in this cabana, gorgeous lighting. And we had the camera was too far from the far fence. So we ended up building a rig camera on a rig that
right.
the camera dropped in the pool, of course, just before we needed to get the shot.
Yeah.
Immediately, the photographer didn't panic, which a lot would. Didn't
Of
panic. Grabbed a
course.
second body. The assistant was right there. Had seen this before. Was on the new rig. We're capturing within 15 minutes. New photography, and it just on being unflappable is really important and needs to be able to deliver on demand and deal with anything that's going to go wrong. And I've seen it 100 times happen. So important, important.
It's wildly important because people are looking to you for the mood of the set. I think so. My wife always tells me that because we do, husband and wife team. She's the executive producer. And if my mood's off, it affects everyone. Prop stylist, I gotta have that high energy. That's why I'm drinking 10 coffees in every single shoot, because I don't want that lull where I look agitated and you see me agitated and you're like, I'm not working with that guy anymore. I mean, I'm not like that
Right.
naturally. I love what I do, but I do see it and I look for people and I get stressed. I'm not gonna lie, but I just don't let my face know. My face isn't gonna show you I'm stressed in any situation. I mean, I just don't. I try to keep my cool. If I need five, I just take five. I do a fake bathroom break or something. I just like, okay, let me figure this out. Tim presented a new idea, a new challenge, or something went wrong. This isn't working. Let me just have a second where I can figure it out without people looking at me. And I do that. And I come back and I regroup. That leads me to my next question with you, Tim, because I think people underestimate the value of your personality on a shoot, or and people overvalue your quality. We all like to think like I'm hired because I'm amazing at what I do, but if I look around, there's a lot of people that take amazing hotel photography. There's a lot of people that do amazing assignment photography, but I've been told, not to pat myself, that I'm easy and fun to work with. So like for you, what are you looking for? Like what's making you hire this photographer time and time again, and what's making you not hire a photographer time and time again?
Well, you said it perfectly, is that, you are setting not only the creative director and the art director, but photographers is setting the tone for the day. Is
For the
you need
weeks
to be
too,
positive
for your case.
for weeks.
For weeks.
Absolutely. And it's, and for weeks at a time, you got to be digging deep to keep that energy going. And that's, there are plenty of photographers that are capable and some
Hmm.
that are even far, are amazing photographers, but they have a shitty attitude. And that, I'm sorry, that's there's 20 to 25 people on set,
Right.
and if the photographer is setting the tone of a shitty attitude, that sucks. So
Yeah.
no, that doesn't work. And if I have
Ever.
anything to say about that, that person, I wouldn't work with that person again if they got a shitty attitude. Now I always get people can have an off day, and that's fine. I get it,
Yeah.
but
Sure.
bad attitude is a bad attitude, and you gotta dig deep and um, people. There's 15 people looking at you setting a tone, and so
Mhm.
as me being, again, most of the people on a shoot are freelancers, and I'm the one corporate person. I all the freelancers need to be big boys and girls and present themselves. And there's plenty of personalities in all those people. And there's a reason why we hire them as creatives, because they don't work in that corporate world. But everybody needs to be positive and needs to be a great collaborator and to
Mhm.
great energy and positive. And it's too long of a shoot, too long of a day to have
Mhm.
sour apples, right? It just sucks. So yeah, not good.
Not good at all. I've seen it, and we hire photographers too for our commercial business, and that's one of the things I look for. Same as you, I have a really hard time trusting someone if I haven't seen them before. So a lot of cinematographers that I've hired, I've worked with them in another capacity where I get to watch them. I was on this TV show and I could see them work, and I saw they never lost their cool in the hot summer days, right in the middle of the heat. They always had a good attitude. I'm like, that's the person. Everything else is fine, like. But people really, we really do overvalue ourselves. Like, well, I'm good. And that also leads me to like the thing where people, I get a lot of students now that do my online classes, and they're starting off in their photography industry and like, how do I get seen? How do I get noticed? And you touched on that a little bit. Like often it's like, well, hey, I saw this person's assistant and they were great, and they had a great attitude, but like that's not must not always be the case. Like, how else do you get seen? Like, were people just sending you links to their portfolio? Were they sending you hard copies? I mean, I know now in 2000, what is it, 2026? Now people sending like, would they send you prints? And like, yeah, how do they get noticed? How do they stand out? How do they get Tim to hire them? How do you get on one of these jobs? Besides the other way
Yeah,
you mentioned.
right. Well, I think it's coming up is one way for sure.
Hmm.
And then it's the other way is being recommended by fellow creatives. Somebody that, hey, I worked with so and so. I worked with Justin on a shoot, and he was amazing, and he created this most amazing content that we've seen in a long time. So that's the second way. And the third was not the typical solution was, promos and that kind of stuff.
Mm,
I've been around the business for a very long time that, we used to get all those, the mail in the mail, the promos from photographers and stylists,
mm,
you name it. And I loved him because he would, I have a pinup board of all the stuff that I was inspired by or I liked, and I just kind of pin up and I kind of kept using it as my, it was the precursor to Pinterest. It's kind of like my
mm,
inspiration board of photographers, things. And so, that's definitely a way. And so, I've seen that kind of transition a little bit into emails and promos, that kind of
mm,
stuff. And I'd love to see more of that. Um, you know,
mm,
I, seeing somebody's work as a promo coming through, into an email would be great, because most of my stuff that comes to my inbox is crap. Not, it's like bills or
right.
it's bad
Sure.
spam or whatever it is. So having something, just inspirational images, that's something I don't see much of it these days, and love to see more of it. So that's a way to get noticed for sure. Now, again, as in looking at those bigger shoots for my bigger clients, I'm going to pull in people that I know or is coming
Of
from a
course. Too much
recommendation.
at stake. Yeah.
Which is stake. Now that's not now my business now is, I'm working with those smaller brands. I'm working with stuff that
Mm,
is brands that are kind of trying to build what their look is, and there's opportunity for a junior designer, because I couldn't afford that $3,000 a day photographer. I'm now looking for $1,000 a day photographer, or a
right.
650 or 850. That somebody that's
Sure.
trying to build their name. So there are opportunities that now there's not going to be an 8 week long shoot. It's probably going to be a day long shoot, or even I'm looking at, a half a day or something like that. So there are opportunities that are out there. Um, you just got to kind of create it and start you know, hitting the pavement and being creative about how you approach photographers or creative directors and art directors and people that are content creators.
Yeah, it also like question on that. I have a follow up about the what to put in that email, but before that, I just kind of want to talk about. I don't think a lot of people realize how hard it is to get a client like Pottery Barn where you're consistently working. Like I have a couple of these marquee clients that I didn't get till my 40s, that just come back
Right.
to me, and then you never know when you guys are going to change gears. You never know, like, hey, we decided to do all studio stuff. We don't want you anymore, so that can change. So you never know, and you have to be versatile. You have to be ready to shift. But also, I don't think a lot of photographers know out there that there's seasoned veterans that also, or young photographers who have big clients, but they also assist on shoots like yours. So they might be the lead on one shoot, but they assist because of what you said. I saw that in one of the big clients I work for. This guy he has his own, in his own right, great photographer, does big campaigns in the US, but on these other shoots, he works as an assistant to this other photographer. And that led to him, that was like, it seems like a long way, but no, drop the ego. He's an assistant, even though in his own right, he's a lead photographer. That led to him getting now being the A shooter on for that same client. Fascinating, right? And that was in his 30s. I'd never done that. I didn't have the opportunity living in Asia. There wasn't that pipeline of these like photographers with these big group. I started my own company, and so that was it. But that's a
Right.
great. And I saw another friend do the same thing. He was probably in his mid 30s. He was asked to be an assistant on a shoot because yeah, they wanted to see what you were looking at. They wanted to look at him. How does he work as the assistant? How they know he has the work, right? But they wanted, how does he work under pressure? And also, hey, this is how we work. Is this for you? Is this what, and observing and learning. And he did, a year's worth of shooting as an assistant for a rate that's not nearly what his normal day rate is. But then guess what? A year later, he's one of the A shooters, and that's a pipeline for him. All right, so I want to kind of talk about
So
that
let me
quickly.
touch
Is
on that really
sorry,
quick.
yeah, yeah,
But I think that it's critical, is that I think there's a personality that we're talking about, is somebody
hmm
that is willing to an assistant as well as a shooter, and be humble enough to be able to do that,
yeah,
is somebody that I would personally, that I would want to work with, because that person isn't going to have an ego. There are plenty of egos
yeah.
on shoots, plenty. I've seen them all, um, and plenty. And
I bet.
the people that I want to work with are the ones that are unflappable, that have checked themselves and have
Mm,
confidence in themselves, that be able to say, "Hey, I'm okay with being assistant for Justin, because
mm,
hey, work is work, and I'm going to learn something. I'm going to see how he works with his client. I'm going to see how
hmm
how he interacts with his team, and just be a sponge. And so that's a personality that is a really indicative of, or that's the kind of people that I want to work with. And so, and there are a lot of other people that feel that same way. So it's an interesting way of approaching, way of getting into the business and being just smart
Yeah.
and check your ego.
That's how my assistant did it. I mean, he gets all these he's an A shooter for us for photography, for video, but he started for years working under me on commercial shoots. He still assists me on other shoots. And then he goes right back because I knew he had the attitude. I knew he had the right attitude about it. He's okay being my assistant for an assistant rate. And then I will get him day rates for a lead photographer for video and stills. And I got to see firsthand how he works under pressure. He's great. I've never seen him ever have a bad day. It's kind of annoying because he's like even better. Like he has a better attitude than I do these days. No, but he's 10 years younger.
What's his name, by the way?
Nam.
What, I'm gonna write that down. Yeah.
Well, all the shoots go through my visual, so I'm fine with that because I get a percentage.
Right, perfect. There you go.
But no, it's a great way to learn. He saw, he could watch, he could see how I dealt with these problems, and I could see how he would deal with it, and he just got the experience. And I think that's just such an underrated way.
Right, and then you're comfortable with putting him in front of your client, knowing that 100%. If you can't be there, and he's going to represent Mont Visuals,
Yep.
and be a part of the brand. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's such a great way.
Right, and that's so when as I rose up through the ranks, and so I couldn't be on shoots all the time. I'd have art directors there in my presence, or to represent me, and then I knew that I was putting them with photographers and stylists and people that were strong enough that they were going to be able to carry through what we had built over the years, and so that was important. Attitude is everything.
That's such a huge thing. I'm glad we talked communication, attitude. I think all that is so much more important than your portfolio. There's a lot of great photographers out there. There's not a lot of fantastic photographers or great photographers with a great attitude. And you see it. I mean, I bet on these shoots where I'm like, you pay how much? And how come someone else isn't doing this? Oh, the last guy, I had one client tell me the last guy said, oh, he's not getting portfolio images anymore in an NDA full buyout shoot. And she was like, okay, like, why do you need that? We're paying you for full buyout. And I'm like, yep. You will never hear that out of my mouth. Like, I'm happy with what and also any job, you take the money, you give your best, no matter what it is. So that's what commercial photography is. Now, I want to kind of talk quickly before we end. I want to talk about that. Like you said, some people email you, and that's how people need to reach other people nowadays. So like, what do you want to see in that email? What do you not want to see? I'm sure you've seen some terrible mistakes on websites or in emails. So like, what do you want, Tim? I'm pitching myself to you. You've got your agency now. It's you, your consulting company. I want to get on your radar. What's my email need to look like to you?
I think it should be, focused on, how I'm presenting myself out there. So as a creative director for whatever brands, is that your content that you're trying to reach me with is relevant. I've seen and this came a lot of as in the promo days, and even emails and websites they're asking me to check out and has nothing to do with what I'm doing. So it has to be relevant. It has to be connected to
right.
So I'm selling interiors. I need somebody that's selling interiors. I don't want to look at a baby photographer. Actually, I do as right. a brand that worked with babies and kids, but but I want it to be something that is relevant. So don't show me stuff that's your artwork, because that's your side project. That's your artwork. Is show me stuff that's relevant and something that's going to say, oh, I could use that, or I could use that person, or that goes on the idea board and go, oh, here's somebody that could potentially solve a problem that I'm working on. So it's harder to do that, obviously, because you're getting very specific to. Right. You want to, as a photographer, you want to, cast a wide net.
You have to nowadays too. You just have to. Yeah.
To some extent, yes, but then it needs to be a wide net that needs to be relevant. So it's kind of two ends of the spectrum. I understand that. Yeah. But it's hard to. But
like, how do they achieve that, Tim? Like, is it on their website? Is it okay for me to have like I link to you to my interior stuff and lifestyle stuff, but there's another gallery on there for pictures of centipedes. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I think you have to, and as you were coming up, you're as a wedding photographer, and then showing other stuff as well. I think that's great. Absolutely, that shows diversity.
You're not frowning on us for that.
What's that?
You're not frowning on my centipede work. You're not judging me because I have that other work. People do think these things.
No, I think it's great to have diversity, but I also think you should also have um, a thing. What is you can't be everything.
Yeah.
You're either, you pitch yourself as, as a location photographer and hotels and that kind of world, that you're not presenting yourself as a centipede photographer, right? You're presenting yourself
Not
as,
publicly. No. Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, that's your
Correct. Yeah.
separate site. Right.
Yeah. But but I
It's
do think people struggle with that. They're like, should I have my personal work on there? Should I do this? Or, there's a lot of website no-nos. I'm sure you can, I can look right away when I do a portfolio review, like, hey, this looks amateur hour. You're trying to get, for an amateur, that's okay. But if you're trying to get hired and you've got like, I don't know, you've just got this random project that you shot in film that isn't any good, that hasn't been curated well. If it's really done well, fine. But don't link me to that, or don't link you to that if you want you to hire you. That could be on your site, but I don't need to see that front. And you do, I mean, I would think from your perspective, like, hey, if I'm hotels, I want to see mostly hotels on your site. It's okay to have the
correct.
portrait gallery, but I'd like to see mostly hotels. But it's something we all struggle with because we don't know early on in our careers what's going to catch. We might like hotel photography, but we don't have enough yet. So, also, like, I don't know if there's any advice out there. Like, what about these people that, like, how do they get that portfolio for interiors? I don't know if you have the answers. If they're not, because you have to get hired at some point. So what do you do to get those like first few shots underneath your belt? Do you work for free? I'm always sort of against that, but do you have any advice there?
Well, I think, well, to answer your question is, I think back to the site is, I think it's the
Hmm.
most important thing, the hardest thing to do. Even I struggle with it, and I'm sure you do, is self-editing. The hardest
Yeah.
thing to do is,
Yeah.
and taking away the stuff that doesn't resonate or doesn't. And
Hmm.
it can be like, I'm looking at stuff, and I'm a person, I shoot photography myself personally, and I go, I
Mm.
remember how hard it was for me to get that shot, and I
Right.
tried it and tried and tried it, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what went into it. It's not, is it a good shot, and
Yeah.
does it resonate? And you got
Right.
to take away, you got to be able to, and pull in a friend, pull in a fellow photographer, or, and even
Mm.
my mother's been a great editor of looking at my stuff, going, oh, that's kind of nice,
Yeah.
but yeah,
A second set
but
of eyes is so important.
it's being able to be self-critical. That's really hard to do, and that's
It
hard
is.
to do. So, and then the second part of your question is, you know, I think, you have to figure out a way, if you want to be an interior photographer, is get on those shoots that are interiors as an assistant, as
Hmm.
a, even a second shooter or whatever it may be, and also to call in the favors that you can shoot interiors. Shoot your own home, your own apartment, your own whatever it may
Mm.
be, that shows your eye and how you see light and how you see a story. And it's just not one image;
Hmm.
it's a group of images that sit together and tell a story. You can walk around my house and go, okay, here there's little vignettes, and go, here's a story that I want to put together and do it. And so, or you call your friends or your friends' parents or your whatever it is that has a beautiful home, that you go and say, hey, I'm going to go and can I borrow your home for the day, and I want to shoot it,
Mm.
and start to do it that way. And I know a lot of photographers that or assistants that are trying to work their way up and connected with real estate agents, or um,
Yeah, it's smart.
with it's real estate agents or builders, builders that are, up and coming builders that are doing renovation in this house. Say, hey, can I come in and photograph it before and after, kind of thing. And they're working for free for themselves, or they kind of then do they with builders or interior designers, or whatever it may be, is kind of go in and say, hey, I'll work for free to shoot this, and I can use this photography to promote myself, and you can use my photography to promote yourself, but just tag me on it, kind of stuff. And there's a great
Yeah.
way of symbiotic relationship that way. And I've seen a
Yep.
lot of guys kind of do really well with that, because there's so much building here in the Bay Area, and there's a lot of great design work
Sure.
that's happening. So there's that is a way to make things happen and kind of get some experience that you wouldn't necessarily have.
I'm glad you added that. That's great insight, Tim. I'm glad you added that about the portfolio and like reviewing your own work and editing your own work, because I don't think nearly enough people put enough time in that. And That's not amateurs. For amateurs, it's just a great lesson in how to grow, and it's an important and easy lesson. You have someone else edit. You get a, you get a review from not just a peer, but get it from someone outside who doesn't know you, who's okay with being critical. Like I do that, but even like even photographers have other photographers review their work, but like most photographers aren't hiring other photographers. Have someone like you do it. You should do portfolio reviews because they need it, because you know what to look for. Hey, this image is not going to get me. I wouldn't hire you because of this, or this 1 out of 10 brings you down. But this image, lead with that. That's a great, like I think more people should get an outside view, not just from fellow photographers or friends, but from creative directors, from art buyers and editors as well. I think that's so important. Such a big part of my schooling was editing each other's work, peer editing, and then having our teacher just be brutal to us. Brutal. He would always, and it's still in my head. It's still, hey, Justin, there's no excuses in your caption. I say that all the time because it's true. I even say it on commercial shoots, or just the right attitude. Get there early, stay late, never show that all these things are just like buried in my head, buried in my bald head. All right, ending here, Tim. We're running out of time. I appreciate things, but just like you've got your own thing now. Tim McGuire Creative. What are you excited about, like moving forward with your business? Tell me about it.
So like I said, I've been interiors for so long, and what I'm doing now is last couple of years, probably 3 years, is working with all different types of brands and helping them with, you name it, from design work to content creation, to helping them build their voice in what their photography should look like, what their branding imagery should look like. And so what's been really exciting about for me is I've got diversity, and I've got 1 week I'm working with an interiors brand. The next week I've got a steady client right now that's a nonprofit with the Marine Mammal Center, and I'm helping them with all their design work, which is, as you do, a lot of personal
Get
work.
me for that shoot. I don't care what. You could pay me in just seal pictures or whatever. I would love it.
Exactly, and it's wonderful to feel good and give back and do something that's not so grinding. And so that's been really the thing that's been eye-opening for me, is doing something that just diversity and working with all different types of clients. So that's been kind of the thing that I'm kind of focusing on, and it's not even focusing. I'm broadening my horizon and doing all kinds of different, which has been really enlightening, and kind of what I got in this business for, of just doing different things for different clients. And 1 week I'm with interiors, and next week with mammals, and next I'm with a startup flask company or whatever it may be. So it's kind of it's kind of fun. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
That's so cool. Really I bet.
Yeah.
Well, man, it's been so insightful to hear from you and hear all your everything about the industry. If you ever decide to do, educational package or teaching online, because that's what I'm doing now with my Ask Mott. I'll give myself a plug here, askmott.com. It's all of my coaching, all of my portfolio reviews. But like, honestly, if you ever decide to go into that field, I bet a lot of people that come to me, they would learn a lot from you, just about portfolio review, getting into the commercial world insight, stuff like that. So if you ever do that and want to collaborate, I'll push you out there to the world, because this has been so insightful. This information doesn't exist in many places online. I don't know why. It's just like something everyone wants to hold to themselves, but it's important. It's important. All this stuff is very helpful. So I appreciate your time today. Make sure you guys go to timmcguirecreative.com. You can add him on LinkedIn. Check them out there. Tim, thank you for today. And anything you want to say to the audience before we go, or anything before we sign off? But I just thank you, man. Thanks, brother.
No, it's been great. It's been a while since I've kind of talked about this kind of stuff with fellow peers, kind of. So it's always good to brush off those cobwebs a little bit, but enjoy your content, enjoy watching what you produce out there. So keep it going, and yes, for sure, let's keep talking about ways of keeping this going, because I think there's a fun dialogue here, and there's a lot more to tap into for future conversations. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, brother. I'll sign off here.
Cheers.